most trophic levels are going to stop at the tertiary consumer level. However, some communities can have up to 4 trophic levels. So basically we're going to have a quaternary consumer. For instance, an eagle that is grabbing a snake, okay, that eagle is going to be basically a quaternary consumer. A killer whale in a marine environment, in aquatic environment, it's going to constitute a quaternary consumers. Now you understand that you don't have killer whales everywhere, and in any case, the bottom line is that in communities, most communities are going to have up to the tertiary consumer. Only few communities are going to have up to the quaternary consumer. Now there is a reason to that. The reason to that, it's because of energy. Okay? Because from one trophic level to another trophic level, there is only a certain amount of energy that can be made available to the next trophic level. We are going to see this when we address ecosystem. So let's address the detritivores. The detritivores basically are going to be this organism that feed on decaying organic material. Okay, so in detritivores you are going to also have decomposers. In decomposers you're going to have mainly fungi and bacteria. You also have in terms of trophic structure, you have the scavengers. The scavengers are several birds, for instance, that are going to eat the rest of carnivores or roadkills. Now, if you live in Ohio, you are going to see that during this period of time when it's warm, you have a lot of roadkills, and as you drive, you can see several birds, scavengers that are feeding on those roadkills. Now, the next aspect that I'm going to address, it's biological magnification. Now, what is biological magnification? Well, biological magnification, it's basically when considering a given chemical that is a pollutant in water, for instance. We see that as we go from one trophic level to the next trophic level, we have an accumulation of that pollutant in the higher trophic level. For instance, when we consider mercury, now a lot of the wastewater treatment facilities, after they clean the water, that water goes in streams and rivers. Now in those streams and rivers, you have phytoplankton, you have zooplankton, you have small fish, large fish, okay? And basically, the smallest organisms are going to incorporate these chemicals, this pollutant, at a certain amount. Now, the primary consumer is going to eat a certain amount of the producer. And then the secondary consumer is going to eat a certain amount of the primary consumer, and the tertiary consumer is going to eat a certain amount of the secondary consumer. Now, what happens is that as we look at that pollutant from the lowest trophic level to the highest trophic level, we see a concentration that is higher and higher as we go high in trophic levels, so that some organisms that are in higher trophic levels are going to be relatively affected. For instance, there are species of birds that are affected by the high concentration of pollutant in their system. For instance, there are some birds which when they lay eggs, because of the pollutants that they have in their system, the eggshell is so thin that it ends up cracking. And as it cracks, well, this is going to have as consequence a low number of bird of that species, because the eggs are not going to be strong enough. So the number of bird at the end of the day is going to be lower, so that the more this type of birds are going to have with that are going to be contaminated with that pollutant, the less the less offsprings they are going to have, which is a problem. And then we have the food webs. The food webs are relatively complex and are not limited to a very specific trophic level. So in the food web, you are going to see that, well, if you consider a human being, for instance, a human being is considered a omnivore, because a human being is going to eat vegetables, is going to eat meat, so he's both carnivores and herbivore. Okay, and most animals are going to have a diet that is relatively diversified. There is a reason to that. The problem is that when we tend to eat only one thing, we are having a larger impact on our environment compared to when we have a diet that is diversified. For instance, if you are an eat meater, you are having more impact on our environment than eating vegetables. Okay, that's why it's so important to diversify your diet, and that's why a lot of organisms actually are not feeding only on one single thing. Okay, let's take a look at the species diversity in a community. Now, species diversity is very important, and in species diversity there are two aspects that are important. One is the species richness. So basically, what are the different type of species that are present in a given community? This is what we call species richness. And then we have what we call the relative abundance. Relative abundance, it's going to be that among all the species that are there, how many individuals of one particular kind is present. What is the species that is prevalent compared to other species? Okay, this is going to be very important because it's going to be determinant in the type of animals, for instance, the type of insects, okay, you are going to find in a given area, the type of rodent that you are going to find in a given area. Okay, so the relative abundance is going to determine of the composition of the community. Okay, now those communities actually can be affected by disturbances. Some disturbances are minor, some are relatively deep disturbances. Minor disturbances include, for instance, a flood. What else? We can include also fire, including wildfire, storms, drought. Okay, all these disturbances are going to cause a slight modification of the habitat. Most of the time, it's an advantage to for the community, because it allows the community to basically renew, so that the species that were at one time becoming few because some other species were becoming too abundant are going to basically get the chance to multiply and contribute in the diversity of the community. Then we have the deep disturbances. Those deep disturbances, such as, for instance, a volcanic eruption, okay, the retreat of a glacier, are going to be very drastic, and basically a community will have to be developed from scratch, and this is very complicated. Okay, so that, and those disturbances are going to give rise to two kind of succession, what we call the primary succession and the secondary succession. The primary succession basically occurs where you have um, basically a mild a mild disturbance. Okay, when you have a mild disturbance, no, that's not correct. A primary succession is going to occur when you have a major disturbance, for instance, the retreat of a glacier, and or a volcanic eruption. So whenever you have a volcanic eruption, you're going to have lava that is going to be spread, and that lava is going to become rock. Okay, and that lava that becomes rock, well, plants cannot grow on rocks unless something happens at the first place. So on those new rocks, when you have mountains that are formed because of for instance, the earthquake, okay, because of two plates coming together causing a major disturbance, basically you don't have soil, and because you don't have soil, first of all, you will need the soil to be developed. Okay, and for that soil to be developed, it takes time. Okay, and that soil, as it is developed, you're going to have some vegetation, and then we're going to have some animals that are going to come and populate the place. Secondary successions occur when you have a mild disturbance like flood or drought or a storm. So basically, if you have a tree that falls, well, you have a micro habitat that is going to be created. If you have a wildfire that occurs, you have the forest that is going to burn down, and then you're going to see some new organisms that are going to develop again. In the previous video, I told you about pine trees. Some pine trees actually rely on wildfire for their seeds to be disseminated. If you don't have wildfire, the seeds are not going to be disseminated. So what we consider as a catastrophe in California with all this wildfire is actually beneficial for the community. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for today about community. In the next video, I'm going to address ecosystems. Until I see you next time, take care. Bye now.